Recently, there's been some really big rumours that sound a lot like back when there were rumours about the Rick Grimes movie trilogy being turned into a Rick and Michonne spin-off. That of course turned out to be true. It's said that a new phase is starting in The Walking Dead. That will obviously bring Rick back, and I think Morgan back. There's actually talk of a new Gabriel and Aaron show being filmed in Canada.
Just take the cup to your nose and sniff. Tell me what smells you're getting. What does it remind you of?
Maple syrup.
We were heading up north to a settlement in Canada.
Would be cool to see some snowy settings. I think both these characters have proved they can hold their own story. I wasn't sure at first about them getting their own show, because it felt like it would convolute it a bit. If they're giving every Tom, Rick and Harry their own show, it feels a bit like it could thin it out a bit too much. The Walking Dead has always been good at handling many different stories and characters in one, but I guess if it's 6 episodes, it would be quite cool. I'll take seeing Gabriel again. I mean, they couldn't just leave him on that note, could they? That would have been cripplingly sad if that was the last we saw of him.
I want to see him.
I don't think it's the last we've seen of any of them, because I believe they would have said when it's the last time, and I believe that. Even then, I still wouldn't believe them. I'm not going to complain because these are two great characters, especially Gabriel. He might not be as praised as Carol, but his development is really up there. And it's funny because not once has his story been as repetitive as hers. They were so limited in those horrible season 10 bonus episodes, and still did, I think, a decent little story. Now, with a whole budget for them, a whole show, if this is true, greatness could really be on the horizon. I don't think any of the spin-offs have been bad. I like the ones who live, apart from everything about it. I didn't like what the point of it was. I don't like the ending, or I guess how it was done. I thought it was horrible. I didn't like the narrative. Nah, it's a love story. Okay, well that's why it was bad then. But I love the first episode, and I think a big thing about the whole show is that it was great seeing Rick again. All of his scenes were good. Even just hearing him say Alexandria was amazing. But when it comes down to it, I didn't like it as a whole. Seeing Rick was also good in season 8, but I think season 8 was horrible too. This is why these rumours of a new phase for The Walking Dead are really good to hear, because they can give Rick what he deserves. Andrew Lincoln has been teasing that he's going to appear again.
And it's a place that we haven't seen Rick in.
They've handled the soppy romance aspect of it. Both Rick and Michonne are so much bigger than that, and with The Ones Who Live recently being put on Netflix, and it did really well, it broke records. Another season or show with them, I think, is extremely likely. I mean, if you're a fan of Dexter, look how Dexter New Blood ended. Then there was a big surge of popularity for Dexter, so they've kind of brought him back from how that ended without spoiling it. This is largely because of the popularity it's getting. I enjoyed season 2 of Daryl Dixon. It's interesting how people like to bandwagon that it was the worst because characters from season 1 died and so on, pretending to care about them and that they had more to give. If they died that early on in season 2 of 6 episode seasons, it's because they were placeholders. I'm not going to pretend that I care about Isabel, that I'm going to miss her. I do care and feel bad for Daryl going into season 3, and that was the intention of the character. I'm not going to pretend she was bursting with personality. I couldn't give a shit. Carol was being more Carol than she has been in years, and not just some Walking Dead robot doing as assigned. She's so much more than that, and the writers of this show realised that and used it really well. I can't believe they had Carol be mean and lie. That's what Carol is. She's not some mascot like the main show might have treated her for the last few years. This is what she does, and it was so good. I enjoyed the episodes a lot. Dead City, however, the main thing with it isn't that it's bad, but that it could have been such a different show. I remember there was a time in The Walking Dead where it felt like certain stuff was always meant to happen, that they were following some solid plan. Yeah, there'd be characters that left too early that you felt could have done a lot more, but overall it felt like it was all falling into place how it should have, until late season 7 and season 8. Where it turned into what felt like a Disney XD show for a bit.
So that's it? Your confession is that you're gonna kill every last one of them?
Then in season 8, when the main character's son dies, the whole reason he ever did anything doesn't matter because they replaced him like a faulty pen. Then in season 9, when the main character left. Then in season 10, when his girlfriend left. The show fell apart and over time almost became a spin-off of itself. There then came a point in time where it felt like none of this was supposed to happen in The Walking Dead, and something went wrong along the way. Carl Grimes being killed off is, I think, the best representation of that. That's something that I think just never should have happened. I wish I could swap it out with something that you kind of did know they would always do, but was just really bad long term. And that thing is the prophecy of Maggie. Since season 6, the narrative has been she is the leader of everything, or she will be. When Alexandria met Hilltop, it wasn't about Rick or Glenn talking to Gregory, it was about him talking to Maggie.
He wants to talk to Maggie. He wants to talk to Maggie.
Then in the miserable season 8, Rick says she's going to lead everything, and it was just always horrible to watch because, like, the show had sort of surrendered to the idea that she should lead everything because the comics did it. Again, could we not have swapped what you copied from the comics? Copy the Carl thing, not the horrible Maggie thing, because you've actually got to watch the show.
After this, I'm following you.
Even Gabriel was like, what about just following you, Rick? Why are we shoehorning following the whiny, much less personality one? Can we not just follow one of the cool ones? Why did they have the leader of the show say that? Was he just being really humble, or was he in a good mood at the time? He got a bit overexcited. Just because they've had Rick and Deanna say that Maggie's going to be a good leader doesn't mean that she actually will be, or that will be good to watch. As the lineup came closer and closer, you just always knew it's going to be Glenn that dies and Maggie will go on. She's going to have her, she won't be the leader of the Commonwealth, and that's just the way it is. Her having the same cycle of horrible conversations with Negan. Now we've got Dead City going on for probably 5 or 6 seasons, and this is why I think my favourite What If video I've done so far is What If Glenn survived. Some stuff I don't think they would have done, but I like to just do it anyway in that video because Glenn being mad and being so angry at Negan is so cool. That would have been good to see. Seeing Maggie pretend to be mad for years hasn't worked out so well. I just wish back then they thought about the spin-offs they might end up doing, because Dead City with Negan and Glenn is a completely different show. Having this more moody Glenn, having to travel with Negan, but then the older Glenn coming out, the nicer Glenn, more justified Glenn, also feeling a bit bad about turning him over at the end. Couldn't beat that. Stephen Yeun would be amazing at that as well, getting into fights with him.
Together, you and I, we get this done. We don't need the others.
No.
They clearly weren't afraid to differ from the comics. It's an adaptation, not a copy. So of all things to change, would you not have kept around the loved character? What they should have done is have Maggie die and have Glenn show this different side that we've not actually seen before. We've seen glimpses when the governor did stuff to her.
Doesn't change the fact that we're up to our necks in shit.
But it would have been so much more interesting to see this just completely opposite side to Glenn. How the anger and turmoil changes him. The kindest, fairest character I think the show's seen. It's an insanely not as cool show, and I think the most boring out of the 3 main show character spin-offs we've seen, because it's just an extension of the Negan and Maggie scenes that were already, I think, horrible in the main show.
I think I don't know about that.
You can't debate battle plans with me.
Yeah, when you're losing a debate, just say you can't debate me. It's not that I don't get why she's upset. I would be even more upset. I would have taken his head off by now. I wouldn't have sat and watched it to begin with, to be honest. I don't care who he says he's going to kill. I wouldn't have let it happen. But it's the way it's the same scenes just over and over. It's everything about how it's done, not the principle that she's upset. There's greatness in The Walking Dead that I think it's done, and I hope in the future we'll do again. But it's also made many mistakes, and among those mistakes, no one talks about how they could have just swapped Glenn and Maggie around. I don't really care about these arbitrary rules that Negan had, that he wouldn't kill women, he wouldn't kill... You know, these were tongue-in-cheek jokes he made, first in the comics that he wouldn't kill women, and so on, but I disagree with it. If it came down to it, I think he would. We've seen he was very okay with breaking one of his so-called rules.
I would never kill a kid.
So I think he could have killed Maggie. He actually said in season 11 he wished he did.
Yeah, if I could do it all over again, I'd have killed every single one of them.
But I think what I should have said in my What If Glenn Survived video is Negan didn't lose Sil Maggie bit much.
I may have gone too far in a few places.
But because Negan stopped them, she didn't get to Hilltop in time and died. And Glenn would blame Negan for that. And the reason that Glenn eventually spares Negan is because it's not really his fault in the way that they killed Negan's people, so he stopped them and did what he did. Negan just kills Abraham. Maggie dies from complications. I think that is the best storyline I think they should have done and I should have done in that video. With that being said, I do really like what I had Glenn do in that video in the cell. I'm not going to ruin it, go and watch it. All this to say, it's not that Dead City is bad, but it's painful in the way it was so close to being so much better and entirely different, with a much more complex character, with more depth and many unexplored sides. But what do you think? What spin-offs do you want to see? What characters do you want to see again? Do you enjoy Dead City as is, or would you prefer it with Glenn? And how do you think we could see this one day? Contrary to my grungy tone and pitch, I'm optimistic all sorts of stuff could happen with The Walking Dead in the future. An animated series, an animated What If series by them, or 6 episodes of a live action AMC's The Walking Dead What If, one episode dedicated to each character and scenario. But until then, or if they don't ever do that, you've always got my What If Glenn Survived video, which I love. It's one of my favourite videos, so go and check that out, and check out the video that pops up right now if you enjoyed this one. Of course, press the like button on this video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you're new. Thank you for watching, I'll see you soon. Negan doesn't just like kids, he can turn you into one. You cannot convince me that was not a baby.